Good morning, my name's Maggie Bryant and I'm the Senior Sales Manager for Barratt London. Unfortunately, I can't be there in person today due to ongoing lockdown restrictions, but I'm watching along at home just like the rest of you. Throughout this year, a lot of us have taken up new hobbies, from baking to book clubs to yoga. Many people have been using their free time to get creative, which is why we've organised a virtual painting masterclass for this week's Festival of Culture event. Coming to you live from Ridgeway Views Development in Mill Hill Village is artist Dawn Limbert, who's going to be teaching us all how to create a beautiful landscape picture of the Totteridge Valley using pastels. All that's left for you to do is to grab your pastels, your paper and a cup of tea and get ready to create a masterpiece. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, my name's Dawn Limbert. Thank you for joining me at Barratt London's Festival of Culture today. Before we start, maybe I should introduce myself. I am a pastel artist and I paint mainly landscape and floral paintings. I brought along a couple of paintings just to show you today. The paintings I tend to do are around the local area where I live in East Barnet, but I've often run around this area when I used to do quite a lot of running with a running club, and so I know it quite well. Today we're going to do a painting of the Totteridge Valley. I don't know if you can see behind me, you can just see it over the tops of the houses there. So what we're going to actually do is, instead of just painting the houses, we've taken a picture of the area and I'm going to take you through the process of actually doing the painting. What I've tended to do is that when the picture was taken, it was very green. Now we're going into autumn, so I've played around with the composition of the picture and the colours. Because as you can see, I'm a colourist. I do like to include lots of colour in what I'm doing. And so I tried to make it a little bit more autumnal and fitting in with how I paint, basically. So I brought along some of my pastels. When I gave out the list, I told you to buy some inscribed pastels. You can use any pastels or any medium, whatever you fancy at the end of the day. I tend to use artist quality pastels and artist quality paper, and I brought along a selection today. So I've got Unison pastels, I've got some Terry Ludwigs, I've got some Schminkies, some Sennelier as well, and I've got these little ones, new pastels, which are hard pastels, which I'm going to sketch in the underpainting of first. So let's get started. So I've actually put both the pictures. I've got the picture up on my iPad because I'm right-handed, so I do tend to look to the right. But I've also put the picture up here so that you can see if you're wanting to either paint or draw along with me. So we'll see what we're doing here. As you can see, it's the sky's a bit flat, so we may well sort of play around with that a bit and make it a bit more interesting. And obviously the headline there is quite flat, but we're going to play around with that as well. So let's just sketch it in. Now remember, when you're doing this, where it doesn't matter if it's accurate or not, and my hand might not be painting that straight at the moment. All we wanted to do is just get the shapes in. So I remember with trees, here it looks like it's all one line mainly, but it's not. It's actually all over the place. So we're just going to change that as we go along. That's it. And what we need to be also thinking of is the shapes. So on this here, you've got this shape here, nice big triangle shape. You've also got the shape coming across here, and then you've got the tree lines as well. And then obviously you've got the horizon as well. Now, the thing I would say when you're doing this as well is, and artists find this a lot, is when you first start the painting, first 15 minutes you might think, oh God, this is awful, I'm not bothering with this. But stick with it, because at the end of it, hopefully you'll get quite a nice painting. Now here, where I'm doing this, I'm doing a bit of an underpainting, so I'm actually bringing in a really vibrant colour to sort of play around with. When I did this as a practice the other day with a friend of mine, I just did all of it together. And then we're also going to bring in these tree lines here and here. And at the moment, it doesn't really matter how you bring them in, because you're going to play around with them. I've actually as well got a palette of different colours here. I'm just going to bring that in. So this is the, as I said, this is the underpainting. Let's bring some of the blue. It's like a dark blue for now. I'm going to bring a bit of pink on top of that as well. And just to mix it up a bit, we'll bring a bit of orange in. There's quite a lot of orange on this right hand side. And for the tree line, what we're going to do is make these trees quite dark to start with, so we'll make this more of a purple colour. Bear in mind that what we're actually going to do is, I'm going to be rubbing this in a little while. Now, today I'm using artist quality paper, which is Pastel Premier. You can use any paper, basically. I also use Canson Matisse Touch, and I also use, what's the other one I use? Pastel Matte. Quite a lot, which I quite like. And all these are sort of really, really nice and easy to get hold of. You can get hold of them from places like Jackson's Art or Amazon or any good quality art supplier as well. Bring some of that dark in there. So here, as I said, we're only just putting in the shapes and the darks. Some darks there. Well, the thing is, if you can, when you're doing this, it's really nice to just take a step back and just look where the darks are and the dark shapes. And when you're doing any painting, it's always a good idea just to take a step back and see where you can see anything else happening in the picture. So looking at that, you think, oh, that's a bit of a mess. And it does look a bit of a mess, but as I say, stick with me, because we're going to just blend some of this in a bit. What we're wanting to try and do here, so if you try to talk over when I'm doing this, is we're wanting to cover the tooth of the paper. This paper is sort of slightly sanded, so rather than using your finger, I'm using sort of insulation things or pipes, because that way you're not going to take the skin off your hands. If you use your finger all the time, I do know one well-known artist friend of mine who is a really, really good artist and very productive. I pretty much took the skin off his hands doing it. Which is not what you want to do. So it just gives it like a fuzzy look at the moment, right? So rather than, whatever you're doing pastel, do not blow on it, because obviously you don't want to be inhaling. Here I've got a nice little tray that collects any pastel dust. And if you can do it with an easel, it's better, but obviously it's not always possible. So that's just, all this is doing is coating the paper. Now what you've got to remember, if you're doing it with a paper that hasn't got a tooth, then you won't be able to put that many layers on. Whereas with this particular paper, Pastel Premier, or Canson Matisse, or Pastel Matte, or any of them that are good quality papers, you can put quite a lot of layers on. which is much better generally. Let's start putting some of the darks in now. So as you can see on this, there's lots of areas of dark here. There's some darks at the back. But what we're wanting to remember is obviously we want to create that feeling of depth. So we're going to make some of this quite light. But what I'll start doing first off is I'm going to just now put in the sky in more detail. I will use a nice bright blue for that. As I said, me being a colourist, I prefer to use bright colours. That makes it a little bit more interesting. Now what I'm doing when I'm putting it on with the side of the pastel. I'm using my whole arm and I'm just doing it lightly. What I'm also doing is just changing the direction of the pastel. So first thing I did when I first tried using pastels is I was really heavy-handed and doing really big marks, and they're sort of like shouty marks. Your shouty marks, or your spice marks as some artists like to call them, are what you add at the end. And they're the marks that make it pop. Here we're just wanting to bring in a suggestion of the sky. And at the moment it is quite flat, we're going to bring in some pinks as well. And again, we're just blending that in. So rather than mixing in a palette, what we're doing is we're actually mixing on the paper itself. So adding that a bit more. What we're going to just do as well, I'm just going to lift this up and put some colour underneath. Now probably with this particular painting, the only thing that I may well blend a little bit will be the sky itself. What you're just doing there is, I'm just doing it very lightly, just so that I'm not doing anything affecting the skin of my hands. As you can see, it's very dirty work. What is quite often with me is, because I like to, when I'm painting at home or in the studio, I like to paint with listening to music, or I like to paint outside. During the summer months, I often paint with a friend of mine called Jen Fleming, and she's a really good artist, and we like to get outside and do some plein air painting and just get off the beaten track and paint together, which is really nice. So we're just adding more layers. As this stage, it is what I class at the ugly stage, so don't worry about it just at the moment. Let's just maybe think about reintroducing some of these parts of the landscape a bit more. So I'll bring some darks in for this. So again, all I'm just going to do is sketch it in lightly. All of this is going to likely to be covered up as well. Now you'll have to excuse me if I'm pulling faces while I'm doing this, because I do tend to find that I'm stepping back, I might squint, I might sort of look at it and sort of have a bit of a gape at it sometimes. Some orangey yellows. Now over here, this sort of colour will fit really nicely. Nice autumn colours. I don't know if you can see outside now, it's actually brightening up, which is great because it's been raining pretty much all weekend. Perfect. So I'm just adding a little bit of sort of trying to harmonise some of the colours. What we need to do is bring some of that green in there a bit more. Effectively what you're wanting to do is not wanting to have everything looking the same colour. So if we wanted to bring in some darks down here, we can do. So on this bit down here, there's like a dark blue colour. I'm just going to introduce it initially in purple. And that goes really well with the yellow as well. And I'm just changing, as I say, all the way along, just looking at different mark making. Good. Here, I'm just going in these shapes here. It doesn't really matter if they're just absolutely correct at this stage. You're just wanting to start the shapes. And here, you're just wanting to that line of trees. Some marks there as well. And then we're going to bring in some of these darks down in this corner. So you really want to bring in the dark underneath, because these are sort of like what I call the dirt. And so when you start adding the layers of colour on top, then you've got something for it to dance against, really. And you'll be able to see the colour a little bit more. We might want to bring a little bit more of that dark blue into there. And I'm just sort of trying to suggest as if it's branches of trees, but we know well that at the moment it's not. I'll just clean my hands a little bit. As I say, pastel painting is really, really messy, and I quite often than not get covered in pastel. When I'm listening to music, and say for instance my phone goes, and I decide to answer it, I then find out I ended up with pastel on my ears as well. And nobody always tells me about it, so that's not a great idea, but there you go. Let's bring in some of this. There's some pinks down here as well. Now, I don't know if you can actually see out the window, but there is actually, the looks of it, a bit of a football ground. When I was looking earlier, you can actually see the thing, the goalposts. Okay, that's all right. Let's change. So if you don't like a colour, like here, what I've done is I put a darker one of this, and I don't like it, so you just add it. Or you can change the colour if you really don't like it. I've got like a bristle brush, and you can just take the colour off. You just gently scrumble the brush, or if you haven't got a brush, you can actually just use a little bit of kitchen roll, and kitchen roll does the same thing. So if I do it on here, so on that bit, or on here, you can see it just takes it off a little bit. When you're doing a pastel painting, it is very delicate while you're doing it. But actually, when it's finished and you get it framed and it goes under glass, then it will last for years and years and years. And the pastels that you can get now are such good quality that they're very colour fast. So they're really, really good. Which is why I'm a big fan of Unison pastels in particular. I'm not advertising for them, by the way. I just do like their pastels. In that shape in there. So I do tend to dance around the painting a little bit when I'm doing this. And, you know, everybody has a different way of doing things. And how I paint today will be completely different probably to how I paint another day. I'm probably painting a little bit different, mainly because obviously I'm doing this live streamed as well. So let's bring some of this dark in here. Lovely dark green. But we're not, I don't know if you can see, but because of the tooth of the paper here, that nice pinky colour is actually showing through. So it gives a bit more of a contrast. And then you can add, if need be, the little bits of green also come through. And I'm just going to very, very lightly start putting some of the green, because there's a very sort of vibrant green here. If anybody actually wants to see more of my work, if you can actually see more of my paintings on either dawnlimbert.com, or you can catch my work on my Instagram page, which is Dawn Limbert. I'm also on Facebook, as Dawn Alison Limbert as my personal page where I post a lot of my paintings, and also as Dawn Limbert Art. I'm also available for commissions. So you can just contact me either via Instagram, direct message me, or Facebook, or you can email me. As I said, this is what I was talking about before as well. Here, you clearly see this is the ugly stage of the painting. This is where most people, when I first started, I'll probably be now thinking, oh, I've had enough of this, I'm going to give up. But we've got to sort of crack on with it, because actually it's always going to look very different at the end. Even the one I did a practice of looks completely different again now. It's a nice green. Okay, so we've got I'm bringing in a bit more of a lemony green here. What I'd also like is if anybody does decide to do this painting, and then and this particular scene, whether you do it today or whether you do it at another time, if you want to, I'd love to see what you do. So if you want to post and tag me in it, either on Instagram or Facebook, that'd be really good. So I'm just going to all I'm doing is very lightly blending this tree line. And I'm going to take a step back in a minute and have another look at it. There we go. So I'm going to just jump down here a bit. So I'm just starting to add the layers of texture and colour a bit more. Oh, nice red, deep red there. Again, all I'm doing is very, very lightly suggested colour. I know that this is incredibly multicoloured, but it will look a bit different when it's finished. And so what I'll also do is when I do finish it, I'll post it as well on my Instagram and Facebook so people can see the difference, because you can guarantee it's going to look a lot different from me just spending 55 minutes to an hour on it like I'm going to do today. Some really nice pinks in there as well. I don't know if you can actually see, but I think there's a house in the back. But what we're going to do is we're going to probably leave that out, because the landscape itself is really beautiful, and that's not really a feature of the painting. Actually, funnily enough, it'd be really nice to actually take on board some of those lovely clouds at the back. So today, while we're using this, I'm actually going to maybe bring in some of the scene that we've got at the back. We've got some lovely, lovely clouds. It just takes the flatness away. What we're doing is making it a little bit more lighter towards the back. What we can actually do there is then we can even put into the trees a little bit more. So these ones I'm using here are what's called new pastels. These are a little bit harder type pastels, and they're quite good because they allow you to put layered colour, but also you sort of blend in a bit more at the same time. So just bring a bit, using a little finger, and just smoothing some of that out a little bit, so we don't want any real hard lines. Oh, excuse me, I think that's my stomach rumbling. What I'm doing now is actually probably incorporating a bit of where I can see outside a bit more, because when we first came here this morning it was such a horrible day, but now it's picked up a little bit, so it's quite nice. This is a slightly different blue, a bit more vibrant, because obviously the sky is not all going to be one colour of blue, it's going to be various colours of blue. Or I might even bring some of this blue into here a bit. There's that nice deep blue. Dark into here. Now, when I'm not actually painting in the studio, I do like to paint outside as much as possible. And obviously, this year's been a very, very strange year, not being able to get out quite the same. So always, if you can, take a step back and have a look at your artwork as much as possible, because it's going to change and move around, and there's going to be bits that you actually quite like, and there's bits that you don't like. And if you ever look at when you watch somebody painting, or you're doing painting yourself, you'll often find that, I'm just going to move this over a little bit, you often find that you liked it better half an hour ago than you did. And so mine often say that. Or you do it, you take a picture of it, you think, oh, I just need to do this, and then you do a bit more, and then you realise that actually it's better as it was. I'm just going to make this, at the moment this is very, very reddy orange. I'm going to just slowly dampen that down a bit. And bring it more orange first, and then just take it down a bit more. And then we're going to make sure that these then using the side of the pastel, we're just going to create this suggestion of the grasses here. This here as well. So we need a more darker green. We need to try and get these darks in a bit more. Look that line across here. I've got this dark green across here as well. I can honestly say that even for me, this is definitely at the stage where I don't particularly like it. So I'm just putting where I think the trees are. So I'm just so I have an idea of where I'm going with everything. Okay, bring some more of these back in here. So gradually, even though I know it seems quite disjointed and I'm jumping up and all over the place here, I'm just looking, when I'm using a particular pastel and I'm seeing a colour, I'm just looking for where I see those shapes, really. And where I see the shapes, I'm bringing them in a bit more. So say, for instance, with the trees here, you can then start introducing them. All of that green. And I need to bring in this dark green more back into here. A friend of mine often says when we paint together that she's always amazed at how it's my picture. She'll be doing her own painting, she'll look at what I'm doing and then look back at it half an hour to an hour later and it's completely different. And the thing with painting is you never, having done this as a practice run, this one is absolutely completely different to the other one. Far more colourful, I would say, but just different. Bring some pinks into there. Oh dear, sorry, my stomach's rumbling. It's a TV, but now, I don't know if you can see with some of my pictures here, like this one on the right-hand side, some of the paintings I do can be quite complex. I do graffiti paintings as well, and they take a lot longer. Something like this, which is only just sort of just quite a simple one in the sense of not that much sketching to do. You can get away with not actually drawing even. But some of the other paintings that I do involve are quite complex. So all my paintings take different times. People often ask me how long it takes to do a pastel painting, and the answer is it varies. Some really can take quite a while. Some of the big ones I've done, like I did some big graffiti paintings. I'm currently working on a series at the moment of graffiti paintings, and they are taking quite a while. You're trying to map in where all the sort of graffiti is, and actually just trying to sort of work out the colours, the mark making and everything else. So we're not wanting to put in a relief, we're just wanting to suggest colours, and at some point we're also going to suggest some of the actual branches themselves. So when you're doing branches, classic one thing you can actually do is, rather than just doing it as a drip like this, you want to be just very loose. So and all I'm doing is I'm just rolling my pastel up and down like this. So it creates marks. So this is great for when you're doing grasses as well. So say for instance on the bottom here, there's some very light coloured grasses. So what we could actually do is just roll it up. You can't really see it with that. You just roll it up and down. You could even bring some of that green in if you wanted to create that. And here you could actually have some really nice dark as well. Just roll that dark in. So I'm just going, all I'm doing at the minute is I'm just rolling marks in because I'm going to be covering up quite a lot of these marks. There's actually something tree going on here. There's some shapes here as well. And it doesn't really matter because all we're going to be doing, these are just all these little marks in here. We're going to be covering up a good chunk of these. There's actually a tree here as well. And if we don't like it, we just take it off. That's the beautiful part of pastels, I think, for me. And the way that, because when I first started out as an artist, I started sketching initially. The first thing I ever did was a drawing of our cat, a Burmese cat called Ralph, and I realised it actually looked like him. And then tried again to do something else another day, and it was absolutely horrendous. And then just persevered and then tried doing watercolours and then moved on and had to go doing acrylics, and I even had to go at doing encaustic, where you're using sort of demo resin and you heat things up on a griddle. Did a lovely workshop over in Ireland just to try it out, but realised that it wasn't for me because of the fumes. You really just have to try different things out, and then you will eventually discover what your medium is. So for me, having now been doing pastels for probably about 2 or 3 years, it's what I really, really enjoy. Can't see myself doing anything else. There's some great pastel artists out there that I actually really admire. So I think in this country, probably one of my favourite artists is an artist called Tony Allen. In America, I really like Richard McKinley, Casey Clarn, Marla Begetta. There's so many good artists. And you just find that as you go and do more and more, to clean my hands again, you find your own style of art and how you progress with it. So one tip I would always say is try and clean your hands, keep your hands clean, because then if you don't, you'll smudge it, and it's very easy then to spoil your painting. So getting back to this. So yeah, still at its messy stage, but it's coming along. Just make some marks here. So the thing to do as well when you're doing your mark making is don't think of it as you can actually have your hand just doing one way, that way. You want to be more using your whole body if you can, so it doesn't really matter. So just practice yourself, just doing marks and drawing and just being loose and just having fun with colour. So even the marks doing this are quite nice in a way. It just gives you, so we're just suggesting then ways of applying pastel to the paper, and if we don't like it, we just take it off. And I mean, this here on this particular bottom left hand corner has now probably had 3, 4 different layers on, and it can probably take up to about, well, some people will put up to like 20 different layers of pastels on. Let's get that colour in again. Remember, any marks that we do cover up and we want to bring them back, we just bring them back. Just add them in again after. So here, I'm just going to bring some lightly scrumble some of this lovely yellow over this. So it dampens it down just a little bit. I really can't get enough of colour when I'm painting. And the thing as well is, if it doesn't quite match your actual picture, it doesn't really matter, because all you're trying to do is your interpretation. You're not wanting to do a photorealistic painting, are you? At the end of the day, you want to do something that means something to you. And we're not going to get this finished today anyway. There's absolutely no chance of getting it. But we can actually just get a lot of it sort of laid down as far as getting some of the colours in. When I'm doing this, I'm finely blending. I'm just changing the direction as well, because I'm going to lay more colour on anyway. And here, because of the direction of how it sweeps down, I'm just gently sweeping my little finger down to get that suggestion of the hill sweeping gently down. So it's starting to have a bit more shape to it. Oh, a nice purple here we can introduce as well. So I'll just bring that more at the back, just to suggest a bit of distance. We are really lucky actually living in this area of London. Where I live in Barnet is very picturesque, lots of lovely parks. And anyone who lives here would find that, you know, you've got some really nice stunning views out the back here. This is a very, very vibrant green, probably one of my favourite greens. So when we got the picture to do this, and this picture was taken, it was just all green. So it's much nicer now to have a bit more changes in colour. So you haven't got that continuity of just lots and lots of green. I'm going to just cut into this a little bit to get that. Want that dark again. So all I'm doing is I'm just bringing some of the darks in here, and then I'm going to lay some lights probably back on it again. There's that tree there, there. You can bring that green into there as well again, in between. I'm doing it quite light at the minute because actually it's just a suggestion. And I will be bringing in more in. When I sort of go home and I work on this more in the studio and have more time on it, it'll be a little bit different. What I should say is that this painting, is when I go home, I'm going to be working on it, and eventually it's going to be auctioned for a local charity. Now, I'm hoping it's going to be North London Hospice, but I'm going to find out in the next few days what's happening. But it's just that it's one close to my heart because a friend of mine and one of our patients, she actually spent the last days there. So I think it'd be really, really nice if I could give something back to them. So because I'm working quite quick, i.e. in an hour, this painting is very different to these ones. I spent a lot more time on those ones. Oh, might bring some slight reds into that orange as well. Now, I don't know if you can, I probably can't see, but because of the tooth of the paper here, when you are laying down a mark, so when you're laying down a mark on, say, smooth paper like this, white, it coats it a bit more than it does on here. Here it lifts, and you're only getting part of it coming through, so it gives you like a sense of texture anyway. I'm going to bring some of these darks back in here. And here. And again, take another step back. What I tend to do when I'm actually painting at home or in the studio, I quite often take pictures. And then there's another way you can do it is standing with a mirror with your back to it and have a look at it and see what it looks like. But I think for me, taking a picture on my phone and then having a look at it gives me an idea of what's working and what's not working. Because there's bits of this that's working and then bits of this that's not working at the minute. And it really is just a case of just playing with the marks and enjoying yourself. It doesn't matter how it turns out. You know, when you're learning how to paint, you sort of given rules of what you should do and everything else. But I learn once you get better, you come along and you break the rules. You do what you want. Let's try some nice yellow in there. Bring that one there. So here I'm just looking at these little shapes here, there's little shapes here, like a round shape here, round shape here. So again, I'm following the colour. That's not doing too bad. So we've probably been going about 50 minutes. And it's just the start of it. So you're just looking there now and thinking, okay, I can see what I can work with and what needs more work. And again, I might actually just blend that a little bit up there as well. Just to create a bit more movement in that sky. Remember, don't worry, if you haven't got one of sort of this pipe tube, and you can just use your, if you're using it on smooth paper, you can rub it in with your finger or with like a paper stub type thing, or you can use kitchen roll, but do it very, very lightly. But if you're using anything with a tooth, then obviously don't use your finger, because otherwise you'll take the skin off if you're not careful. So I'm just bringing a bit more purples in here. Down into this bit here. Actually, the purple's, I think purple's working, but I may well look at it later and think, oh, I don't like that, and take it all off again. Now, what I tend to do is, if I've introduced a colour like this purple, I quite often like to introduce it somewhere else. Now, you might say, well, there is no purple in this pot, but so what? There can be some purple as far as my painting is concerned. Bring some of the branch into that colour. Maybe bring them in here if you wanted to. Definitely in there. So this is coming down a bit. What I'm actually doing is just adding a little bit here. It changes all the time, as you can see. This is very different to what it was like at the start, and it's likely to be very different to what it's going to be like at the end. That's way too bright green, so we can just change it. That's still quite bright, but I can add this green and then just dampen it down a little bit. Not liking that so much, so as I say, if you don't like it, just get rid of it. You can actually even sort of cut into it yourself by doing that, just making marks. And actually by lifting it, you can actually change it as well. So we need to work into this bit up here now and bring some of these other greens back in. So these are like more warmer greens. Some more warm down here. I need to bring this back up. Let's see if we've got a different green we can use. A tiny piece of green here, which is quite bright. Just to make some different marks. Now, when I sort of go home and work on this more detail and fine tune it, I will be going into a lot more detail probably on this. We haven't got the time to do that today, so it's just a case of suggesting it. And it's definitely at the stage where I really don't like it at the minute, but that doesn't matter. Because it's going to look a lot different. So this is where you sort of have to decide at what point do you actually, what you're going to do as far as sort of the rest of it. Now for me, you're going to take sort of what we're doing. When I'm going to go home, I would actually make that sort of horizon, cut into it a lot more to make it so that you can actually see the different parts of the trees. I've also suggest the shadows under the trees a lot more, bring in some more of the lights, and then I will work on the foreground. What we're wanting to do with the foreground, we're wanting to make it sort of a lot more texture so that you can actually see that this is the trees in front of you and you're sort of looking in up to sort of the panoramic view. I mean, it is an amazing view that we've got from here. So it's really, really nice to be able to sort of paint such a scene. As I say, if you keep, I know you, those of you that's actually watched me today, it's quite good that you've been and joined us. Please do post your pictures if you get a chance, because I would really love to see them. When you're on the spot like this, it's very different to when you're painting on your own and sort of no one's watching you. So it's a lot different. So just bringing in more of that green. This is more of a limey green. So you can actually see on here some of the green showing through as well. So when I'm doing up in the foreground here, I'm doing more horizontal mark making. When I'm doing up here, not horizontal, more vertical even. And then when I'm up here, I'm doing more horizontal. Lots of little dots and dashes. So you can see that obviously grass is not all one colour. You want to make a suggestion that you can see that where the light catches the grass, in some areas it's light, and then other areas it's more of a bluey green. And you can actually suggest that as well. And up here you've got that real dark blue. You can blend that in or take it out, whichever you want to do. Or you can even bring a little bit of that blue. Just a suggestion elsewhere. And then just lightly, using your little finger, blend it slightly. So you've got that slightly different look to it. It's really starting to get a lot more colourful, this. Right. So as I say, I will be dampening it down a bit as we get further along. So I hope people who have been following at home, any of my friends or anybody who knows me on Facebook or Instagram that's had a quick look, I hope you've enjoyed the process. As I say, the end product's going to be very, very different to this. If you do like my paintings and you want to have another look at them, then feel free to check me out on Instagram at Dawn Limbert, or on Facebook at Dawn Alison Limbert or Dawn Limbert Art. And I'm available for commissions of landscapes. I even do the odd animal portrait, although I prefer obviously to do landscapes. And it's just, I think coming from Yorkshire, I prefer the outdoors, so this is why I tend to do as much painting outdoors as I can now. Yeah, it's very, not quite my usual, that's all I can say. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is a demo, so it's never going to be, having now done this demo, it makes me realise just how different it is and how hard it is for people to actually do this type of thing for a living. As much as I do love painting, I don't actually do lots of demoing. I mean, normally in my studio or outside. So I don't know what we're doing for time now.
Yeah, we've had now.
What's that?
Yeah, we've had now.
Okay, well I think that's enough then, isn't it?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, should we say goodbye for now?
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today. Hope you've enjoyed it. And as I said, you can find me on Instagram or on Facebook or on dawnlimbert.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for joining us today for our virtual art class with Dawn Limbert. We hope you enjoyed yourselves as much as we did. If you'd like to watch the video again or share it with your friends, the whole class will be available on our Barrett London YouTube channel, as well as Facebook and Instagram, where you can also re-watch last week's virtual jazz brunch performance. Likewise, if you'd like to learn more about Ridgeway Views or any of our other developments, please feel free to reach out to us or visit our website barrettlondon.com. We'd love to see your paintings from today, so if you'd like to share them, please use the hashtag Barret Festival of Culture. If you like this event, please join us back here in 2 weeks' time on Sunday, the 29th of November at 11 a.m. for our virtual cookery cast with previous MasterChef, the professionals contestant, Ian Samuels. Thank you for watching. Please stay safe and have a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye.